Welcome to another video from Demystifying Proposals. Our mission is to break down the proposal process and make proposals make sense. In this video, we talk about building proposal outlines, how to follow sections L, M, and C to create compliant outlines. As a reminder, proposals are part of the business development lifecycle, so we'll talk about that for a bit. Proposals are built over time and are based on reviews. The proposal manager will supply an outline that's compliant with the RFP requirements. You must use this as your guide. You aren't expected to sit down and write amazing prose. If you can do that, great. If you can't, the proposal manager will work with you. But proposals are iterative and go through lots of phases. Each draft builds on the last one. Each phase is reviewed to see how compliant, responsive, and compelling the draft is. And please note the level of detail that's expected at each phase of the proposal process. This is what we mean by building a proposal. Here's the business development funnel. We call it a funnel because it starts with the largest number of opportunities and it narrows down to the smallest number of opportunities. At the largest end is your corporate strategy developed by your company leadership, and that reflects all opportunities that your company is interested in pursuing. Next, the BD leaders and the account leads identify which opportunities might be the most valuable for your company, valuable being by dollar value or by strategic value. Those opportunities are then input into the customer relationship management so that everybody can see them. At the next stage, the qualified lead stage, the BD leaders and the account leads qualify those opportunities. They present to the leadership why they believe that it's worth spending time and energy working more diligently on those particular opportunities. In the capture and pre-proposal development stage, the capture managers develop and execute a capture strategy against those opportunities that have been identified in the qualified lead section, and they may narrow down the list of opportunities that the company is going to pursue based on what information they find out during that capture phase. In the final phase, we call it proposal development, and the proposal managers are in charge of this phase. You'll see that it's the narrowest part of the funnel because you're going to not pursue every single opportunity that you can possibly pursue and actually develop a proposal against it. So that's the smallest number of opportunities. On this slide, we present your typical proposal schedule, assuming a 30-day turn. Day 1 is the RFP drop, and day 30 is your proposal submission. There's a lot of things to get done between day 1 and day 30, as listed on this slide. This slide represents the approximate timelines for each of those phases of the proposal process. When we talk about proposal outlines, it's also important to talk about the color team reviews. There's pink team, which is the first review, and at this point you've probably just gotten the final RFP and hopefully are tailoring your blue team drafts to match the RFP. Authors should have written to every requirement, though some sections may be only outlined, not full text. At red team, you should have a pretty complete proposal that shows all of the elements you intend to have in the final version, though they may not be finished yet. And then there are two final reviews that happen that are limited to a select few of reviewers. There's Gold Team, which is usually scheduled for a few days before submission. It is a unified document with a technical edit complete, the pricing volume included, and the proposal content should be complete with the possible exception of final graphics or information coming in from partners. The White Glove is the final review and is only to ensure that the document is clean with no typos and that all graphics are final. No other changes should be accepted. Another thing to think about is that most email systems have some kind of limit on them, and lots of RFPs list size constraints for files. So this is one of the things that you should put on your list to track. Graphic-heavy technical proposals get big very quickly. Cost volumes with lots of inserted files from subcontractors, for example, can also get large very quickly. So make a plan for how you will handle a proposal that gets above the side limits. Send the technical and cost volume separately, for example, or incorporate inserted files only once the PDF of the main document has been completed. This means the additional inserts will not have the same headers and footers, however, which is a consideration. Or divide the files into smaller pieces, or use a lower resolution PDF. This can cause other problems and should be only used as a last option. Be sure to communicate your thinking to the proposal leadership to include pricing and contracts to ensure everyone is on board and doesn't have any other considerations. In this section, we'll talk about the basics. Most federal proposals have these kinds of sections. They may or may not be numbered or lettered the same, but there should be something that's a statement of work or a PWS. We'll call that section C throughout. There's usually instructions to the offerers. We call that section L. And there's usually evaluation criteria. We call that section M. The structure of the outline or compliance matrix starts with section L, with section M filtered in, and then section C. So step 1 is to start with section L. Step 2 is to map in section M into the L structure. Step 3 is to put in the statement of work or the PWS section wherever L and M require you to put it. Step 4 is to look in section H to see if there are any key personnel requirements that you need to put in your outline. And step 5 is to make sure there's nothing hidden in section B, which talks about the CLIN structure and the type of contract. You'll want to develop a compliance matrix. This is usually done in either Excel or Word, whichever is your preference. You want to document the proposal instructions. I recommend making this its own section of your compliance matrix. Next, put in the section L elements alongside the section M elements to show how the two are related. Be sure to include any L elements that don't have a corresponding M element in their own row, and be sure to include any section M elements that don't have a corresponding L element also in their own row. Then break down section C. You may want to also include the deliverables as well as the tasks. Check your proposal outline against your compliance matrix. If you've done it right, the table of contents for the outline should map to your compliance matrix with the notations in the headings. Make adjustments as required before sharing the outline. And it's often a good idea to have someone else check your outline and compliance matrix to make sure you've caught everything. After all, we're only human. We use the term section L, M, and C, but not all proposals will have something called section L and M and C. Some customers have their own numbering instruction or naming convention. The Department of Homeland Security does this, for example, numbering their RFPs instead of using letters. But there's always something that's called proposal instructions or instructions to offerers or something along those lines. It has the instructions for fonts, number of pages, etc. And there's always something that tells you how the proposal will be evaluated, whether that is tables of excellent, good, very good, poor, and unacceptable, or very relevant, relevant, somewhat relevant, and not relevant. This is the equivalent of section M. RFPs usually include a section telling you what the work the government is asking you to do. That's the statement of work or the performance work statement. For IDIQs, however, this may be only a very high level information, but that means it still needs to be addressed. Most companies have a proposal template, so be sure to use yours and follow the style guidance included in the templates with regard to fonts and colors, etc. Of course, being compliant with whatever the proposal instructions say. Your cover pages often include specific information from the proposal instructions as well, so make sure you pay attention to this. The cover page also usually includes the FAR disclosure statement listed below. Include the RFP information on every page, usually in the header. That's the name of the RFP, the volume name, and be sure to use whatever the RFP uses. So if they call it the business volume or the pricing volume, or sometimes they just call it the proposal, use whatever the RFP uses for that information. The RFP number should be exactly as the government has put it in the RFP. That is, if they don't put in a number sign, don't add it. Also include the proposal due date. That's usually in the footer. You may need to change that later, of course, if you get an extension. The footer also includes the language from the FAR about the disclosure statement that you put on the cover page. So be sure and include that in your footer on your proposal outline. In this section, we'll talk about how you create an outline for the technical volume. For your technical volume proposal outline, set up your level 1 headings to match the proposal instructions, usually found in section L. Add the section L references to the name of the header in brackets. So for example, if the first section that you need to add based on your proposal instructions is technical approach, that would be 1.0 technical approach with the brackets for RFP section L1A in this example. Then your management approach might be section 2 and your past performance might be section 3. Note that the RFP references change as appropriate. Next, break down the section L sections. So the technical approach may have more than one subsection in section L. For example, approach to the statement of work. Note, if the section L subsections are numbered, add that information to your bracketed reference. So, for example, 1.1 might be approach to the statement of work, and then the RFP reference includes the .1 that is included in the proposal instructions. And then section 1.2 might be meetings with the customers. And note that we also changed the section L reference to match that second level of heading. Then do the same with the management approach. Remember, keep the subsections in the same order as they are in the RFP from the government. Do not rearrange to, quote, tell a better story. Assume the evaluators will have the list in front of them in the same order. Next, you're going to map in section M, or the evaluation criteria. In a perfect world, the RFP will have the same sections for section M, or the evaluation criteria, as it did for section L, the proposal instructions. But if it doesn't, you'll have to figure out how to add anything new. The order of section L takes precedence over the order in section M. Add the section M references to the name of the header in the brackets after the section L citations. So, using the example that we had before, section 1 is technical approach, and we include in the brackets both a section L reference and a section M reference. This is to make it easy for the evaluators to find the information when they're doing their evaluation. Next, as we did with section L, break down the section M sections. So the technical approach may have more than one subsection in section M, and the same with the management approach. Also, a reminder to keep the subsections in the same order as the RFP from the government. One other note is that the subsections in section M may not match the subsections in section L. Include both sets of subsections in your proposal outline. Finally, you want to figure out where the statement of work or performance work statement fits into the technical approach. Usually there's an instruction to, quote, describe your approach to the statement of work in one of the subsections for the technical approach. Keep the statement of work or performance work statement tasks in the same order as they are in the SAO or PWS from the government. Do not rearrange them to tell a better story. Assume the evaluators will have a list in front of them in the same order. Then add the section C references to the name of the header in the brackets after the L and M citations. So, for example, task 1, program management, which might be the first section of the statement of work tasks. You want to include the L reference and the M reference or the technical approach, and then add the statement of work reference which in this case is section 6.1. And then do that for all of the other tasks. Like I said, we recommend keeping the L and M references in the SAO subsections just to make it super clear to the evaluators that you're responding to those sections, as well as the statement of work or the performance work statement. Resumes and letters of commitment are usually appendices to the main technical volume. Sometimes there are also draft plans required for proposals. So hopefully the proposal instructions say how these are to be included and that they're to be included outside of page count as appendices. So for example, you might be required to submit a transition in plan or a transition out plan or a quality management plan. Put the appendices in the same order as listed in the RFP. The final step in developing a proposal outline is to assign page limits for each section and subsection in parentheses after the section L, M, and C references in the heading. So for example, section 1.0 is technical approach, and you'll see the L and M references in brackets after that heading. And then you might assign 10 pages to that section. So you put that in parentheses in the heading. Then you want to break down the next sections as appropriate. So section 1.1, task 1, program management, might be assigned only 1.5 pages. Note that this means that 1.5 pages is part of the total 10 pages assigned to the technical approach, meaning you have 8.5 more pages to assign to those sections of the technical approach. If the proposal instructions aren't specific as to how many pages are assigned to each of the larger sections, such as technical approach, then you'll have to assign page limits to help your authors. Usually, the technical approach gets the bulk of the page limit, as it includes the statement of work and the PWS. However, be sure to take into account the evaluation criteria. If management is the most important factor, consider giving more page count to that section than you usually would, as it's clearly the most important to the government. Don't forget to assign page limits to all sections of your technical volume outline. So within the technical approach, for example, the overall section might be limited to 10 pages, but within it, how are you allocating those 10 pages? Note, we talked about this to some extent on the previous slide. It's very important to allocate those 10 pages across all of the subsections of the technical approach. Same for the management approach, which often has several subsections like key personnel, staffing plan, non-key personnel, etc. Each past performance is usually page limited already in the proposal instructions. Often they only allow 2 or 3 pages per citation. But note that in parentheses in the headings for each of the past performance citations. Also, be sure to note things that are not included in the page count, such as resumes or letters of commitment, but note if there are page limits for each of these. So, for example, quote, resumes, open parens, not included in page count, limited to 3 pages, close parens. This means that resumes are not included in the overall page count for the proposal, but they are limited to 3 pages each. A word on executive summaries. The proposal world generally recommends including an executive summary at the beginning of your proposal, even if the proposal instructions don't ask for one. If that's the case, if the proposal instructions don't include an executive summary, consider having the executive summary not have a heading number and not have page numbering so that the proposal outline, section 1, remains aligned to the proposal instructions. Be sure to limit the number of pages of an executive summary to allow the authors as many pages as possible to write to the substance of the technical proposal. And then think about putting the executive summary at the beginning of the cost volume as well. Remember, a different team of evaluators reads the cost volume than will be reading the technical volume. So having the same information doesn't hurt, and it's good to introduce your team and your win themes for the cost volume as well as the technical volume. In this section, we'll talk about how to outline the cost volume or the business volume. For the most part, the outline will look very similar to that of the technical volume. First, you map in section L and make sure that your level 1 headings match the proposal instructions at the highest level. Those are usually found in section L. So, for example, the first section might be contract line item numbers, and the second section might be price schedule. Note that just as you did with the technical volume, you're going to put the RFP section references in brackets after your level 1 headings. Remember, keep the subsections in the same order as they are in the RFP from the government. Don't rearrange them. Just as with the technical volume, you need to map in section M. And just as in the technical volume, if there are different evaluation criteria listed in section M, then there are proposal instructions in section L, then you have to figure out how to add anything new. But as with the technical volume, the order in section L takes precedence over the order in section M. Then add the section M references in brackets behind your section L references. Again, this is very similar to what we did with the technical volume. Next, break down your section M sections, just as you did your section L sections, and keep the subsections in order as they are from the RFP. When it comes to cost volumes, we usually don't have to add page limits, as cost volumes are usually not page limited. But in the rare instance where there are limits, be sure to note them in the proposal outline, just as you did for the technical volume. We hope you enjoyed this video from Demystifying Proposals.